Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the penultimate Perils in Paradise reveals. Up to date is Warrior, and we only have Druid left after this. We've seen some of the Warrior cards before. One of them unintentionally, we've seen a sneak peek of Char beforehand, before it was even meant to be teased. And we've seen the Ride Cleaver, which was intentionally teased. We know that Hunter is touristing in Warrior Land, and Warrior is touristing in Druid Land. And actually, we know both the tourist for Hunter, that's Ranger Gilly, which kind of implied that we're going to get a hand buff type package. And we know some of the Druid cards, which kind of implied that we're going to get some sort of location build for Druid, maybe. But not a lot else to go on for the Druid side of things. So again, bear in mind, you know, when we get to the Warrior Tourist, we don't have a great idea of what Druid is actually going to be up to. Anyway, let's get to the first card, and what a card this is. Maybe the best minion of the set. It's going to be debatable with this and the cheese neutral guy. Wensterosity. I actually don't understand the pun of this card. Let me know in the comments what the pun is actually meant to be. Either way, it's a 9 mana, 6/9, nice, elemental, taunt. At the end of your turn, summon an elemental with stats equal to this minion's. This is disgusting. Really, really disgusting. This effect has been on a card before. Funnily enough, this was on Blistering Rot. That's on 0 play. That was a 3 mana 1/2 though. This is a 9 mana 6/9. That's actually really good stats. We have had, like, for similar cards to this, Malignant Horror, which I think is still in. Actually, no, it's just left standard, right? Either way, it's sort of a little bit of play in Death Knight. There was also the copying mech. Is it called Lab Constructor or something like that from Rogue, which did see some play as well in the Mech Rogue package. So this ability to copy cards is sometimes good, sometimes bad. Great insight there. Okay, how do you know this is going to be good? Why am I really worried about this card? Okay, Blistering Rot for 3 mana, you get bare stats 2/4 in stat line. Without buffing it or anything like that, you get 2/4. For 3 mana, that is not very good. Malignant Horror, you get 4/8. That's 12 stats for 4 mana. And it was reborn. However, there is a small hurdle to get over. You have to get the 5 corpses. This card was good. It saw some play. Now, it wasn't in tier 1 decks, but it was in like the tier 2, tier 3 realm. Wenstrosity is for 9 mana. If you do nothing else, you just play the card and end your turn. It's 30 stats for 9 mana. Like, if you average this out, it's like getting a 15/15 with taunt as well, by the way. Just as a reminder, Thanatum is 15/15 with taunt, also with lifesteal as well. He starts as 30 mana. Now, I do appreciate there are ways to cheat Thanatum down to 0. It does see a small amount of play, I think, in the hand buff deck as well, because it's an even mana card. And sometimes you want this just late finale type card, and you just drop Thanatum on the board. Wenstrosity isn't just this single target beefy lad. Your stats are split up in really, really chunky guys that, by the way, if you don't remove it on the turn afterwards either, both these cards, it's going to copy itself again. Like, this is truly, truly frightening as a card. And this is without doing anything to it. Of course, you can buff it. It's an elemental. How about you put Therazane in your deck and double this? What if you turn this as a baseline card to 12/18 that doubles itself? That's just, you know, a casual 24/36 for 9 mana then, if you play Wensterosity. That's pretty good. Black Rock and Roll is still in the game, by the way, and there are tutors for Black Rock and Roll. Again, that takes into Disgusto region. If you put both in the deck, I think the Hearthstone client crashes. And not only that, we have got a Taunt package still in the game. Now, Taunt Warrior didn't really ever reach any sort of heights. I don't think people really thought it was going to reach these big heights. It's normally hovered around the tier 3 deck, being generous. But I tell you what, the Taunt package did not have Wensterosity at the time. This is something that seriously is going to be very nice to give it some buffs. You know, just giving it +2/+2, you turn it into that 8/11, and it is legitimately threatening, like, It's just so threatening. You have to kill both of them, or you have to weaken both of them, or it just copies itself. It copies itself. Like, there are some decks this is just going to be backbreaking against. Now, I guess you could argue that the downside of this card is it's 9 mana, so you have to get to 9 mana crystals. And some decks don't want to let you get to 9 mana crystals, but of all the classes that you could put this card into, Warrior is probably the best place to deal with the early game aggression. I think even better than Priest right now. Classically, they've always been good at control decks, Warrior. Them, Priest, Warlock. I think Warrior is around there for Warlock. I think Warlock's early game might be a little bit better for control. But, like, it's not bad for Warrior. Let's put it that way. By the way, as well, being a taunt minion, you could tutor for this with Quality Assurance. If you just put Wensterosity into your deck ×2. By the way, this is a common card, so you can put 2 copies of this into your deck. Disgusting. You put the Ziliax in there, which will probably have taunt on it as well. And maybe you put like 1 or 2 other taunt cards, give you a really good chance of drawing this into your hand. You play your draw 2 taunt minions, you get them Wensterosity. And then it's going to be horrible to deal with. You could also then, when it's in your hand, put Rockmaster Voon onto the field and get you another copy of Wensterosity. If your opponent can't deal with 1 of them, good luck dealing with 3 of them over the course of the game or more. By the way, I think as well with this hand buff package, I'm kind of just getting this in a little bit early. You could definitely put the Riff package into that, because Chorus Riff, very good at buffing cards, also pretty good for, giving you some additional draw. And it works very nicely with not just this card, but some of the future cards we're going to see as well. Anyway, if you draw this with Chorus Rift, you've got a 9-12 on your hands, which, doubles into an 18-24 with Taunt. Very fun. And then finally, if you want to do this Hunter into Warrior package, potentially you could play your Wensterosity onto the board, have your opponent, break the wall down, and then just play Sasquatch, and Wensterosity comes back again. And I think that's a good enough use for Sasquatch. Sasquatch, I'm saying it right this time. I think that's a good enough reason to play this card. It is such an insane amount of stats for the cost. I really think this is going to be one of the big cards of the set, and I think Warrior is going to be extremely strong. The biggest fear I've got of this card right now, if I were playing it, is that someone death rolls it at some point. You do this Giga Meme thing, you turn it into a 24-36 or something, and then someone just death rolls it and you machine gun their opponent by accident. But even then, you've got some protection against death roll, because you have your other Wensterosity with these huge stat lines, and they'll just soak up half the damage anyway. I seriously think this is going to be one of the big cards of the opening of this set. This card I don't think will be, though, but it's in this idea of the hand buff Warrior package. We have Undercooked Calamari. 4 mana 3/4 beast. Battlecry, destroy an enemy minion with attack less or equal to this minion's. Okay, we have a sort of similar card in Standard right now. It's called Forgotten Animatronic, and it is really forgotten. This card is seeing 0 play right now. There are some differences between the 2 cards. Actually, Forgotten Animatronic has got a better stat line for the mana cost compared to Undercooked Calamari. Importantly, though, on Undercooked Calamari, it's not just less attack, it's less or equal to, so it's a little bit easier to get the Undercooked Calamari's effect off. That being said, Situational Destruction on a 4 mana 3/4 I don't think is particularly good. You might want to run this, though, into your hand buff package. Maybe you run it with your Ranger Gilly, your Chorus Rifts, your Chars as well, which we've seen. And just steadily raise its attack until eventually you're playing 4 mana Destroy a guy. I think that is legitimately, reasonable. I think if you're not running this in the hand buff package, the card would be unplayable because there is this support around it. I can definitely see that getting into the deck. The only downside to this card, actually, is it doesn't have Taunt, unlike some of the other cards that also come with Taunt, so you could do the Taunt buffing as well. Just as a note as well, this has got a beast tag on it, so if you were running this from the Hunter side of things, and by the way, I'm not actually sure you will run this from the Hunter side of things, you might want the Rift package, which precludes you from including the Hunter cards, because you can only tourist in the new set cards from Warrior, right? So I think there's actually a better package if you just run Warrior cards instead of Hunter. So I think Hunter's been done a little bit dirty with this, but people will try it out. Anyway, if you do go on the Hunter side of things, you could put Messenger Buzzard in your deck. This is a beast. It has beast synergy. You could draw this as a beast and then buff all minions in your hand, not just beast, but all minions in your hand with the Messenger Buzzard. So maybe you will get 2 competing decks of hand buff Hunter Warrior and hand buff Warrior. I will see which one is better. I've got an idea though. We also have this other insane minion in my opinion. We have Draconic Delicacy, 8 mana 6/6 dragon, rush, elusive, can only take 1 damage at a time. We've seen this effect before. This was, oh god, is it Madness of the Dark Moon Fair was this from? I can't remember actually. We've seen this on Moonfang. That was a 5 mana 6/3 beast, which could only take 1 damage at a time. Moonfang didn't see much play. Now, there is a reason why Moonfang didn't see much play, and why I think Draconic Delicacy is actually considerably better than it. Obviously, you can use your eyes, you can see why this is better. Moonfang was just the effect, right? He also only had 3 health, which basically meant you played Moonfang, your opponent had to do 3 separate instances of damage to it. Some classes could just do that with the button as one of the instances, and then just trade 2 minions in and would kill Moonfang. Also, it could be targeted by single target elimination spells, or single target removal from a minion, for example, if it just had destroy a guy. Now, this is where we get to Draconic Delicacy. It has Rush. You will get 1 use at the very least, unless you play it onto a bare naked board. You will always get 1 use of its effect. So you could sort of see Draconic Delicacy as 8 mana 6/5, deals 6 damage. And I think that unironically might be good enough to sneak into some standard decks. And then you add on top of that elusive as well, so you can't just single target remove it. It's horrible. This card will be really, really horrible to deal with for a lot of decks. Now, it does still get wiped out by non-targeted removal, you know, like randomly destroy a minion, or Twisting Nether that just destroys the entire board, or Reno, for example. And I actually think this warrior deck might cause people to go to Highlander deck, so you have Reno to remove the giant minions. But yeah, you're going to need something like that to deal with this card. It actually reminds me a little bit of Rattlegore, and now Rattlegore did see a lot of play in the warrior packages. Now, it's not quite on the level, I think, as Rattlegore. As I said, non-targeted removal will kill this guy. But I still think it's going to be one of those cards that for some decks is just impossible to remove, and yeah, it's going to eat up like 6 or 7 swings. Because bearing in mind again, 8 mana 6/6, not great. If you give this any form of like buffing, if you turn it, you know, into an 8 mana 8/8, suddenly 8/8 rush elusive only takes 1 damage at a time. That is even more frightening. And obviously we have many hand buff cards. We've seen a couple of them. Like if you just do Char and give this, even if you gave it +1/+1, that is another swing it's going to take out from another minion. Yeah, I really think this minion is pretty good. I definitely think it's going to be in the hand buff package. Just revealed moments ago, we also saw the next Drinkies. I think this is the penultimate one. I think Druid has got one as well. We have Cupo Muscle. 1 mana, give a minion in your hand, +2/+1. You have 3 drinks left. It's actually kind of hard to evaluate this card. There's actually not that many cards in the past of Hearthstone that go buff a minion in your hand with, like, you know, an attack. And most of them aren't in Warrior. They're in, like, Paladin and stuff like that. We do have this current hand buff Paladin deck. But it's normally, like, give all minions, not just give a single minion in your hand. That being said, we do see give a minion +1/+2. We've seen it on a card called Divine Strength. Now, that was 1 mana, which you might say, like, you know, Cupo Muscle, that's fine. You're giving +2/+1 with kind of draw an equivalent card on top of it, so it's better than Divine Strength. That being said, Divine Strength is faster because you can put it onto a minion that's already on the board and swing with it. Cupo Muscle, you're going to give it to a minion in your hand, and you may or may not be able to swing with it, depending on if it has Charge or Rush. That being said, it has its advantages. You couldn't normally minion buff this on the board because of elusive. You can buff it in your hand, though. You don't worry about the elusive in hand, so I definitely think this card will see play in this hand buff package, in part because there are so few other ways to do the hand buffing. Now, it is just going to go to random minions. I think it's going to be one of the weaker cards of this package, but if you can just hit the Draconic Delicacy and turn it to an 8 mana 8/7, I think that is more than worth it. Obviously, as well, if you hit your Monstrosity, that's also really, really, really good. I don't want to, like, labour the point, which I could do for most of these cards, but there is just, like, a very, very like preset theme with these cards. This will all definitely go into the same packages together. By the way, we should probably deal with Char. Char, I can't remember what video it was that we did it with. Was it Demon Hunter or Warlock? It got accidentally revealed with some other cards. It wasn't Demon Hunter, because another Demon Hunter card got revealed. Whatever it was. It got accidentally leaked. And I said, we'll talk about this when the Warrior set comes out. It's 4 mana, fire spell, does 7 damage to a minion, give a minion in your hand, stats equal to the excess damage. It's very similar to Arcane Overflow from Mage in the past, which was a 5 mana deal 8 damage. So for 1 fewer mana, you get 1 less damage. That's actually a pretty good deal. Now, I do think the overall effect of Arcane Overflow is better. The fact that you get the minions onto the board with the stats faster than Char, where you have to pay more mana to play that minion from hand. However, as we've seen, there are a few cards we've looked at and are also in the current set, which will benefit more so than just getting, you know, +3/+3 on the board as a minion. You'd prefer it to go onto a minion in your hand, exactly like a card that copies itself, for example, where you get double the bang for your buck. It's more mana, it's more setting up, but it's a probably better effect. So again, I think Char will see play in this deck. By the way, again, I could go through all the minions we talked about before. This card in particular, I think, is one of the reasons why you might want to just do the Warrior package and not the Hunter Warrior package. Because Backstage Bouncer is another card that is extremely good to copy with... extremely good to buff, because you can kind of copy the effect onto another minion. If you hit, you know, a 4 health minion with Char, your 3/3 goes into your Backstage Bouncer. You hit this onto, like, a minion on board. Let's say it's, you know... Let's just say there's a 4-drop on board that's traded with something else, and then you just give it a big... huge stat line of 7/8, and it all has taunt. Really good. And again, this important thing is it has taunt, so you could run the taunt package with it as well. I think you could put something together with this taunt hand buff package, and I think it's going to be really, really strong. Again, this isn't like, you know, excluding the idea of doing Hunter. I also think Azerite Chain Gang has got a good shout to see some play in this deck, because again, if you give this +3/+3, and you can play it as the quick draw as well, it's obviously much more specific this way. You can triple the effect, basically. So that's, you know, that's really good if you can get that off. So I think we're seeing now the full hand buff package. We also have this card, by the way. Line Cook, 3 mana 2/4 tradable minion. Taunt. When you draw this, get a copy of it. Really interesting card. It reminds me a lot of Encumbered Pack Mule, which for 1 fewer mana, it had 1 less health, and it had the same effect. Now, by logic, it implies that Line Cook is understated, and I do think it is understated for the cost. However, unlike Encumbered Pack Mule, which, by the way, did actually see some play when it was released, mainly as an anti-aggro tool, more of a tech card, really, Line Cook can be traded back into your deck for the cost of 1 mana, and you can get another Line Cook eventually in the future. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, firstly, if you trade a minion from your hand into your deck, it retains the stats. Now, this is an important concept, because normally in Hearthstone, when things go back along the chain of command, they lose their stats, right? If something is bounced from the field to your hand, you normally lose the stats on it. If it goes from your hand to your deck, you lose the stats on it. If it goes from the field to the deck, then you definitely lose the stats on it. Tradable, though, breaks that rule to some degree. If you intentionally trade the card, like you use the tradable action, it puts it back into the deck retaining the stats. So you could potentially draw these Line Cooks. You could double buff them with, like, the Detonation Juggernauts, put 1 back into your deck for 1 mana at some point, and then draw it out again and get another one of this buffed variant. You never know, maybe that sees some play. Maybe also you run this with, like, Black Rock and Roll on the package, and just give it even more statage. And eventually you see this as like your infinite value combo, basically. You just keep shuffling 1 into your deck, you draw it again, shuffle it into the deck, and you're just accumulating more and more Line Cooks with like a pretty good stat line. Maybe it would work. Again, this could go into your Hunter Warrior package. It works pretty nicely with Ranger Gilly, and also Ranger Gilly is giving you more cards in your hand as well, like the Line Cook. So this might work pretty nicely with something like Rye Cleaver as well. You make your sandwich, your Gilly's giving you Crocolisks, your Line Cook is giving you more Line Cooks. And then you eventually chop them all up, put them on a sandwich. Delicious. Chef kiss. There's another fun interaction with this card from the hunter side of things as well. If you start trading these back and getting like tons and tons of line cooks in your deck, it makes bird watching way better, because you can shoot it for the line cook, get the copy, and then of the copy and all the ones that you've already got in your deck, they all get +2/+1, so it's actually a really efficient way of giving a lot of stats to a lot of cards in your deck. Now, here's my problem with this. We have a similar type of card in the game right now, and it's in Paladin, called Wind Up Enforcer. This card sees 0 play now. This is trade it back into the deck, and every time you trade it, it summons another copy of itself. We also have a hand buff package in Paladin, conveniently, and this card sees 0 play. I think Wind Up Enforcer may be slightly faster in the way that the Line Cook works as well, so I think Line Cook is just too slow, it's too ponderous, but maybe if you ever get to a point where, and you might get this with control decks, especially Control Warrior, you just need more cards than your opponent to win the game. Maybe you put Line Cook in the deck just to keep generating you more and more value, so that you have more value than the equivalent control deck. It might legitimately be you put 1 copy of this in your deck for the mirror, because if you don't put it in your deck, your opponent will outvalue you. So, maybe. Alright, we also have the Dru Tourist card. 6 mana, 3/3 legendary minion, Ham the Hungry. Taunt. At the end of your turn, eat a minion in your enemy's deck and gain +2/+2. I think everyone when they first saw this went like, oh my god, it's Mutinous again. And then, like, you know, the Neurions kicked in, the Axiom started firing, and suddenly you went like, hang on a minute, it's not Mutinous. There is a huge difference between Mutinous and Ham. Mutinous hit a card in your hand, and it is much more disruptive to lose a minion from your hand than a minion on your deck. Losing a card from your hand is basically wasting a draw at some point throughout the game, and it gives you fewer options to respond to this card on the next turn. If you lose it from the deck, so be it. It basically means you're going to lose the game 1 turn sooner from fatigue. Now, there are some similar traits to just losing a minion. It could see play in a deck just to disrupt some sort of combo deck. If there's ever this really good minion-based combo deck out there, maybe you just put Ham in the deck to eat a guy, and you hope that you hit a combo piece and break the opponent's combo, and then they have big sad times. Maybe. In which case, you could see it more like a Skulking Geist type thing, which, by the way, fantastic art on this card, I just want to mention. Skulking Geist sees a bit of play in Wild, as far as I'm aware. I'm not a big player of Wild, I will admit, but I believe people ran Skulking Geist against certain decks that ran a lot of 1-cost spells. You'd play your Geist, and it would just destroy all their 1-cost spells, break the combos, and you would win the game. So it's more of a tech card. Ham, unfortunately, is on a bigger pool of cards than the specified combo pieces that Skulking might hit. It's just any minion, right? So you don't know what you're going to hit. And actually, when you like sum all of this together, it's a pretty bad card, I think. 6 mana for 5/5 eat a guy from your opponent's deck. I don't think it's good enough to see play in Standard. That being said, you might want to run Warrior with Druid. We have seen a bunch of Taunt minions so far in the Warrior hand buff package, and Druid, we've got a decent idea, is probably going to get some Taunt minions as well, based on their location, so you might put Ham in the deck again, and I think this is true of a lot of the Taurus, which I think are a little bit underwhelming, but you kind of have to put him in your deck so you have access to the other classes' Perils cards. There are other things to make this a bit more palatable, though. If you want to put this in your hand buff deck, if you hit it with any of the hand buffers, then immediately it becomes a lot more appealing, right? As long as you're not getting 6 mana 5/5 destroy a guy from their deck, you're probably fine. At 6 mana 6/6, do I think this would see play? Probably not. At 6 mana 7/7, would it see play? I think at that point you would go, okay, just in case I hit a combo piece, I'd at least consider putting this into ETC. By the way, I don't know if you can put Taurus cards into ETC. I'm actually not aware of that interaction. There's also some other combos you could do with this card. In theory, you could Cover Artist it as well. Cover Artist gets more bang for its buck from Ham because it's a 4 mana card copying a 6 mana card, and it will eventually end up on the same stat line. All in all, it will end up being 10 mana for 10/10 in stats, eat 2 cards from your opponent's deck, and I don't think that's actually a bad deal if you can make that happen, but I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze on the combo with Cover Artist. If there's some way as well that you can get a Dorian copy of this, obviously 1 mana 3/3 eat a guy from your opponent's deck would see play in Standard, so yeah, Dorian could be a good idea. And also, again, if we're doing this Taunt package, It is a taunt minion, so it will get hand buffed by the entire taunt setup. So I do see this world where there's going to be a warrior hand buff taunt package that you might want to go into the druid class with. I haven't seen the druid cards yet, so I can't say if that's going to be true, but I have some good inclinations that's going to be the case. Now, one thing you can't do is you can't put Ranger Gilly in your Ham the Hungry deck, because you can't tourist into another tourist card. That is not allowed. And I think this is what gets me a bit worried about this idea of the Hunter into the Warrior package. I just feel like there's going to be more taunt cards in the Druid package that you would want to run Ham instead of Gilly. Even though Gilly's better for the hand buff package, I think the synergy is just going to be better with Warrior to Druid than it is going to be to Warrior to Hunter. But I don't know, we'll have to see the Druid cards, and eventually I'll put together, deck lists for both of them. And I'll do my Mind Palace where I play the game against one another, and I'll see which one comes out on top. I think they're actually going to be fairly similar. They've both got their pros, both got their cons. Yeah. We also have a incredible draw engine, to be honest with you. All you can eat. 3 mana, draw 3 minions of different minion types. It's just better Roaring Applause, to be completely honest with you. And that's currently in Standard. It's seeing not really any play, but that was 2 mana, draw a card, repeat for each minion of a different type you control. Now, there's a big difference between these 2 cards, because Roaring Applause, you need the minions on the field to begin with, which basically means that to draw 3 cards from Roaring Applause, you need 2 different minion types on the board. At the very least, if they are 1 mana minions, because you don't normally run the 0 mana minions in your deck, that's 4 mana in total to draw 3 cards. All you can eat is just 3 mana. It's 1 mana cheaper already, so based on that alone, I think all you can eat is just going to be a better card. Obviously, you're going to want to draw these insane minions. Wensterosity, the Draconic Delicacy. A minion I've not really talked about with this package either. You could draw an Amalgam with this, the Adaptive Amalgam. Potentially you could start putting all these hand buffs on the Adaptive Amalgam. And it goes back into the deck again, you can draw it into the future, and it just keeps getting, snowball, stronger and stronger and stronger. I think this is more appealing with the Hunter Warrior side of things, where you can then put the Hunter buffing cards on it as well. And maybe eventually Adaptive Amalgam could legitimately be a win condition. I will say, though, just as the card quality, Wensterosity just comes pre-built as a godlike Exodia-like minion for me. Adaptive Amalgam takes some, getting up to Monsterosity power level. Literally, you would have to get up to, a 12-18 stat line on your Adaptive Amalgam, ignoring any other effects you could get onto there. I actually think Adaptive Amalgam might be too slow for the current game, but, it's something you could do. Alright, Warrior, I've said basically every card I've seen so far is good. It'll see some play. Now we'll find the card that won't see any play. It's Food Fight. 3 mana spell, summon a 0/6 entree for your opponent. When it dies, summon a minion from your deck. The entree is Death Rattle, summon an opponent minion from your deck. It's a 0/6 minion, as promised. Wow, this card is really bad. I just don't like it. It reminds me of Worgen Rhodey or Marin the Fox. These were also cards that summon something on your opponent's side of the field with 0-something stat line, and you had to break it for a good effect. Worgen Rhodey, you got a random weapon. Not very good. That's in Standard right now and sees 0 play, I think, in every single deck. Marin, as I remember, saw a bit of play, but the Marin treasures, as we see from Marin currently in Standard, are actually really good. They are better than the average card draw you could possibly get. This gets us to Food Fight. So Food Fight, the obvious intention for it is to break it and get a really big minion from your deck. Now, here's the problem. To guarantee you're going to get the big minion from your deck, you sort of need to not run cheap minions in your deck. And I think that is prohibitively expensive for all the packages we've seen so far for Warrior. Also worth noting, how do you kill the 0/6? Well, if you're a Warrior, probably one of the more efficient ways of doing it is to Blade Storm. You give them a 0/6, hopefully there's nothing on the board, which, there probably is by that point. Blade Storm could kill it for 3 mana, so it's basically 6 mana, cheat a guy out of your deck. That is the best case scenario. You could also ping it with another minion and execute it, but at that point you're in a 3-card combo to cheat out a minion from your deck, and you're looking at something along the lines of 5 mana to do that as well. You could also go with the Hunter card. They have got Deadly Shot and just pray, or, hope that there's only the 0/6 on the board. And you could Deadly Shot it again. This is a 6 mana combo to cheat a random card out of your deck. And I don't think that is worth it in current Hearthstone. Obviously, it's great if you hit something Wensterosity, which doesn't have a battle cry, by the way, because if you're cheating out a minion with a battle cry, you're losing a lot of the value on the card, because most battle cry minions are better because of the battle cry than the stat line. Some exceptions. But if you cheat out Wensterosity, 4/6, that's obviously an incredible high roll. After that, though, you're looking at stuff like Safety Expert, and there's currently Part Scrapper in Standard, which lets you 5 mana cheat a Safety Expert, which is more than the 3 mana cheat you'd get in the Monsterosity, and that's currently not seeing any play in Standard, which makes me think these specific combos to cheat out a certain amount of mana aren't quite good enough right now, and I think this is on that ballpark. I think people will test it, but there's just ways to play around it. It's just slightly awkward, and I think this cost of not having cheap minions in your deck, and by cheap minions, I think you have to summon something bigger than a 6-drop from Food Fight for it to be worth it. So you're going to run no minions below 6 in your warrior deck? Crazy. Ludicrous. Won't see any play. And I think that is that for the warrior reveals. All that is left is Druid now for us to see the full package of the Perils in Paradise set. So if you enjoyed this, why not leave a like and subscribe? Everyone helps me out, and I'll see you again next time. Bye.